The challenge is to be aware of what you say to yourself, the language you say to yourself about yourself. Hello, I'm Julia Barbaro. I'm here with my husband, Gino. And if you have struggled with communication your whole life, like we have for 25 years, this is the show for you. I want you to subscribe and watch these videos because I got to tell you, for years and years, my husband and I struggled. We had a good marriage. We had a great marriage. We had a great family, but our communication pretty much stunk. I'm going to be honest. And since we learned about what life coaching was, and then therefore later on became life coaches, our relationships in all parts of our lives, with our children, with each other, with outsiders, with distant family members, have exploded. And so I encourage you, anyone watching in our situation, please watch these videos and share them.
The reason why I became a life coach, it's pretty simple. I was struggling at my job. I didn't know if I had purpose. I didn't know why I was doing the things I was doing. I didn't feel fulfilled. And I was just looking for personal development. I wasn't looking to be a life coach. That sounded weird 15 years ago. It really did. And to this day, my wife still thinks it's weird because now she's become a high performance coach. She's blown past
Obviously,
me.
we're not competitive.
Through the communication, you can tell. But I remember it was 2009 and I hired a life coach and my wife thought it was the weirdest. Like, what are you doing? And really, I was struggling because I wanted to write a cookbook of all things, and I didn't know how to. And out of all the conversations I had with this life coach, Jim Riley, thanks, brother, he said, write 1 page a day. Now, that may not sound profound to you listening, but to me, it was earth-shattering. Because if I could write 1 recipe a day, I could write 1 page a day, well, by the end of 6 months, I had my book. And that I just fell in love with the whole process. And then I started listening to, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, Napoleon Hill. These are the life coaches. These are the personal development gurus. And I wanted that. So what did I do? I went down another rabbit hole and I went to coaching school at IPEC, the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, back in 2014. And there was another revelation for me. I didn't go to become a life coach, but I went and I learned so many different skills: awareness, listening, energy levels, empowering questions, all of these things that a life coach uses in his or her toolbox. But I needed them for myself first. And it just completely changed my life. I understood what my purpose was. Life coaching allowed me, before we get into the communication, like what happened with me and her, because that was even more important. But for myself, I got clarity on how I could leave my restaurant. I really dove in and it gave me the confidence in real estate. And then the year and a half later, I left the restaurant and I went into multifamily full time. And I have to credit the vast majority of it to life coaching because I needed that personal development. I needed to learn those skills that I was lacking.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you say the word listening, I always go back to that one story, right? Where we were married for 15 years at the time, and my husband was in life coach school. He was coming home from the city, and he must have just learned the listening section because he came and talked to me, and he sat on the couch with me. And at the time, we had little kids, obviously, and life was loud and messy, and here he wanted to talk to me, but he wanted to listen to me for the first time in all of our relationship because it was different. And that's why when I used to make fun of the life coaching, I used to think it was ridiculous and with this woo-woo stuff, and you're supposed to pretend like everything's good. But of course, he had to shatter my limiting belief, and here I am, a life coach. Because we don't listen to each other. We actually have never been taught how to listen, which is ridiculous, right? We're probably thinking that's ridiculous, but no one ever taught us how to listen to a person. We sit there and somebody's talking to us and I'm thinking about what I'm saying next. I'm thinking about why is he taking so much time? Why is he using those words? And I'm trying to fix him. And all we desire sometimes as people is to be heard and to actually listen. And very few people in our world actually take the time to listen to us. They all like to talk. You know what I mean?
Watch this. I'm going to get her really upset right now. There's 3 types of listening.
Gosh.
See? There's subjective listening where you're listening to somebody, but you're watching a football game, but you're not really paying attention. Then there's objective listening where you're just sitting there and you're paying attention and you're locked in a little bit. But then there's the third form. I don't know what she wants to call it, but I'll call it intuitive listening, which is what I was doing that day on the couch, looking at her eyes. What Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. What Chris Voss uses in his mirroring technique and his labeling techniques, where you're really paying attention and you're asking the next question and you're asking the next question and you're understanding where that person's coming from. And they feel empowered. They feel like you're listening to them, like really listening to them, and they create that connection. And all of a sudden, they can become a little bit vulnerable with you. And then maybe you can become a little bit vulnerable with them. And then all of a sudden, you create that amazing connection. And for a lot of years of our marriage, we weren't as bad as what she says it was. It wasn't all that bad. Well, maybe it was, but I don't remember it being that bad.
It's called selective memory.
No,
yeah.
it
wasn't that bad. But here's the thing, Gino, it didn't even compare to what it is now.
No.
And I think that's important to know, is because a lot of people are like, yeah, I have a good marriage, I have a good family life, whatever, just living by and everything's good. And I feel like that's where we were. Everything was good. You know what I mean? We did talk about things and stuff like that, but it was nothing compared to what it was now. And that's the excitement I have when it comes to life coaching, is because, like, let's take your life to the next level.
I want you to share the story because this is important. But before we go on, the definition of what a life coach does, high performance coach, they look at your current situation, they take a look at your past, and they say, this is things that happened. Well, let's figure them out. We're not going to sit in the past. Let's work towards the present and let's try to build a future. Now, that works for a lot of people. And that's what I needed. But as I've gone through my life, I met a gentleman named Phil McKernan. Phil's awesome. Love him. He brought this word therapy on. I didn't think I really needed therapy. But at the same time, it's another form. It's not coaching. And therapy helped me because I had certain traumas as a young kid. I think we all do. Traumas around money. Traumas around how our parents raised us. Traumas around how we may have been bullied in school or how we were afraid to get up in front of people and talk. Those are traumas. And most of those are so unconscious or subconscious that therapy helped me out. We went on a couples coaching retreat last year. It was phenomenal. We're going on another one this year to explore our past. So therapy may work in some instances. Then there's the word consulting. Consulting is what I love to do. You've got a problem. I'm going to fix you, baby. You want to buy a 5 cap, make, $10,000 a month in cash flow? That's what a consultant does. He or she will show you what to do. The coach is there to ask you great questions because ultimately Julia, whether she knows it or not, has the answers deep buried within her. And if I am a good quote unquote life coach, clarity coach, high performance coach, I'm able to ask really great questions because I've been listening to Julia and listening to what she's saying and listening to the words that she is using and she's not using and her body language. I'm able to answer those questions. And when Julia can answer her own questions in her own words and I'm able to pull them out, well, I'm a rock star, obviously, right? But at the same time, it's not about me. I know, but it makes me feel good. But I should be detached from that. And that's what makes a life coach really great. They're detached from what ends up happening, but our job is really, and you can use this on yourself to ask yourself great questions because you're maybe afraid sometimes to answer those questions by yourself. But when there's somebody there challenging you, not worried about what the outcome is, and you're there and you're honestly answering and you're saying these words and you're answering your own questions, it's so much more empowering, Julia.
Yeah, I remember, Gino, once you started life coaching, again, I was very supportive. I knew he needed something. I didn't know what it was. So he's like, what about, I said, sure, go ahead. But it's interesting because it took until I actually saw results from real people to realize, oh my gosh, this is actually something. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what my future looked like, but I became a little bit open to it. And so slowly over time, he has this great Jake and Gino community, all these great events. And people would come up to me and be like, how do you do what you do? And I said, what do you mean? Well, how do you have 6 children? And how do you help your husband with his company and be here and record and all this stuff and be okay? And I'm like, well, I just do it. Well, I need to know step by step how you do it. And I actually was never really taught to formulate, okay, here's how I do things. Here's actually my systems because I went home and I secretly looked into life coaching without my husband knowing, which is pretty funny because I didn't want to I didn't want to let him know that he
The
was
ego?
onto something.
You see the communication, the listening, like she could have talked to me and asked me, but
Yeah.
at the time I remember that so vividly. And and it was on me also. I couldn't explain to her what I did or how I did it. And maybe at that point I was a little embarrassed or ashamed because she looked on it so negatively. So I couldn't go to her and say to her, listen, I love what I'm doing. I'm affecting a lot of people. I'm affecting a lot of change in people. And more importantly, it's changing my life as well.
And so what we've learned in our life coaching experience is being life coaches and also talking with people and applying it to our life. That's why we're starting this series, is because we want to impact as many people as possible. And because it is so eye-opening. I just got off a call with this amazing woman who, it's sometimes you go through times where you see the impact on other people. And that's why I do it. I mean, if you knew me 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I was terrified of cameras. I would never in my life have a microphone before me. And I overcame that fear only because I know I had a bigger calling.
So what she's saying is, thanks, Gino, for introducing me to life coaching, or else I couldn't have done it without you. Is that maybe? No, I'm just joking. But
competition.
It's amazing, though.
No, it's interesting, though, Gino, because I think a lot of times we do get afraid and we don't take that step. We know what we're supposed to be doing. We know we're supposed to be out in the world making a big impact and changing the world, but we are afraid to because we don't, what did I have to offer? I was literally a stay-at-home mom that homeschooled. And when I had the realization that I needed to do more, I'm like, but what do I know? And what I did have something was I had this ability to listen because I was so shy in my life that I never talked. And so I was really good at listening. And so I actually took that and apply it to my life coaching. And that's what it is. And that's what we want to teach you is the little steps, because they're all little tiny steps. They're not like this, you have to go out and speak on stage the first time. They're little steps to take every day. And eventually you will see such an impact on your life, all of your relationships, whether it's with your children or with your father you haven't talked to in 10 years, you'll the forgiveness that comes, the ability to have compassion for people, the ability to listen and to be heard by other people in a different way, the different mindset, all of this stuff is just impacts our life so much. And we just want to share it with as many people as absolutely possible.
I'll leave you with this. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. And the second one is, if you want to be interesting, be interested. And that's what a life coach, high performance coach, we're all interested in other people. And once you do that, you'll start creating much deeper connections with people. People will start liking you. They'll start trusting you. There's 3 things that I want you to do before we sign off. The first thing, go to juliaandgino.com, subscribe, watch our podcast. Go to jakeandgino.com if you want to learn about multifamily investing, how to buy apartments, about personal finance. The second thing that I'd love you to do is Google the word life coach. See how it can impact your life. And the third thing, be on the lookout for next week's show. We're going to be talking all about awareness. And it seems so simple, listening, awareness, but if you've never truly practiced it, it will be mind-blowing. Any final words?
Yes, I'm going to give everyone a challenge because I'm a mom and I can't help it. When Gino says awareness, that's what we're going to be talking about next. I encourage you and I challenge you just for the next week, just become aware of your thinking. Become aware of how you talk to yourself, the language you use, the awareness of when someone walks into the room, your first thought about that person. Because it's hard to change if we don't know where we are, if we don't know how we are, if we don't know who we are. And so we're just going to get that a little bit of awareness of. So the challenge is to be aware of what you say to yourself, the language you say to yourself about yourself, the awareness of when someone comes into your room, especially your husband, what is that first thought that you have about them? Because it might be really negative. And we'll talk about that next time. Your children, when they come in, your mother, whoever it is in your life, when they come in, what is the first thought that you have about that person or that situation? And that's the first step of becoming aware of where you are in the moment.
Thanks, everybody. If you want to learn more about life coaching, you can visit juliaandgino.com. My wife is a life coach. She does group coaching. She does personal calls as well. Check it out there. I want to personally thank you for spending these few minutes of your precious day with us. Hopefully, you will continue to look into life coaching, and we will see you on next week's show.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.